Ladies and gentlemen, love being here. I'm impressed by Warwick University. I love talking to in university. I love to lecture students, but I was very, very curious to see a UK education setup. I haven't seen one in so many years. I mean, I keep coming to London, but for the last 30 or some years, I have 2 kids born in London. I lived in London in the 80s, but I never had a chance to come, and I'm absolutely impressed by the structure, the facilities, and I've been talking to most of you, and it's amazing. It's amazing. I'm very familiar with WES schools, and very familiar with Chinese, Singapore, Hong Kong, but I'm really chapeau. Then I have a disclaimer here. You see that can it work? That can it work? It's that was added to the title because my original email was, if you don't mind, I will talk about investment, and the thing is, can it work? I mean, can the subject work? Okay. Now the way it's been inserted here is I'm about to tell you that Chinese outbound investment is going to change the world, and then it says, can it work? I mean, I'm not sure I'm going to get the Chinese visa renewed. All thanks to you. Now, basically I'm about to say, this is going to change the world. What if it doesn't work? Like gone. Okay? Anyway. Well, actually, I'm happy I picked this topic because I saw the other topics, and they are, a lot of Euro-centered and so on. So I think I feel my speech, I'm either going to distinguish myself for the good, for the bad, but I'm likely to fall average. Okay? Why are we talking about, first of all, standard definition? When I mean Chinese investment, I mean FDI, foreign direct investment, as opposed to portfolio investment. You all know the difference, right? Foreign direct investment is when money comes in to buy real assets or to buy significant company stake. They have a controlling implications. Because China has been forever a foreign investors, but portfolio. China has $4 trillion in official reserves. Of course, that money get invested, but most is in equities, is in treasury bills, is in sovereign debt all over the place, but that doesn't qualify, is purely financial. Now, so it doesn't really, it may shake up the world if it's moved quickly, but it doesn't really gets into the inner workings of economies. Now, so remember, when I mean investment, I mean foreign direct investment. And if you study economics, you see FDI as opposed to portfolio. That's a major distinction. Otherwise, someone's going to say, oh, what's so new about what Forchielli has to say? Well, for the first time in 2014, China has become a net exporter of capital. That is, China was born in '79 with Deng Xiaoping opening up policy as a major destination for inbound investment. It's been developing as a recipient of foreign investment, And so Ping opened the economy, and the foreign investment came in, and bingo. And China had 35 years of explosive growth. Now, for the first time last year, China is invested more abroad than foreigners invested in China. This is a major change. And for the first time, and China became the fourth largest exporter of capital in the world, you know, having a significant impact. Not necessarily, already China had a big impact through trade, because the sum of China is the largest importer and exporter in the world. And now is becoming one of the largest investors in the world, and very soon become the #1 investor in the world. And that's going to change our lives in some way. We have to figure out how that is going to change our life for the better. And the numbers, I'm quoting you, whatever numbers are being quoted, they're not right. Because there is a lot of confusion about the role of Hong Kong. Because in many ways, from China viewpoint, Hong Kong is foreign, so money coming in from Hong Kong is considered to be like foreign investment. In reality, is local investment. So Hong Kong sort of, I'm making it short, the phenomenon is bigger than it actually is. Because Hong Kong sort of hides the reality behind it. But nothing wrong with it. Eh? I'm not gonna. How much time do I have? No, because I can go, you know. But,
25 more minutes at your speed. 30 minutes.
Yeah, well, Hong Kong is because of, you know, the numbers. China's reality is already bigger than it is, because there is a lot of lending, which is considered lending outside of China, which is in reality is equity or quasi-equity. So if they say China is investing 120 billion, no bullshit, it's going to be 200, 300 plus. Then there is a lot of over-invoicing and under-invoicing, and through foreign entities. So that is not accounted for in official figures. But for example, last quarter 2014, China foreign reserves went down by 150 billion in one quarter alone, and that is all money which is being invested overseas. So I'm talking about something which is already gigantic. Where and why China invests abroad? There's a fundamental problem. Chinese need resources. Even though China is big and has a lot of stuff, there are also a lot of people living in China. So on a per capita basis, China doesn't have much. The only resource that China has in abundance is coal. And we can see from the environment and pollution. For everything else, for oil, for zinc, for iron ore, for copper, now even for food, for soybean, and very soon for corn, they're going to need to import. And whatever national leader is going to be there, the main worry is, I'm going to have to keep this machine running every day, and I'm going to have to feed people 5 times a day. So the first reason China invests abroad is to secure resources. That explains 98% of Chinese investment into Africa, into Southeast Asia, into Indonesia, into Myanmar, Central Asia for gas and mineral, and Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Latin America. Latin America has been flooded by Chinese investment into mining. There are whole countries like Peru, like Chile, that received a lot of Chinese investment. It's all going into mining. Canada, Chinese have been big investor into Canada. They made the biggest acquisition in North America when they bought Nexen. I think it was a $15 billion acquisition. It was all about gas and tar sands. Australia, Chinese investment into Australia is humongous, in the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, which is started into iron ore, LNG, and so on. So the first layer, the first stage of Chinese investment was into this country was all resource driven. A second, statistics exist and they're very easily available. I have produced them. You can find them all in Google, but if I go through the pie charts, I never finish. I mean, that I have to cut. And also invest in developed markets. Developed markets are primarily EU, USA, and Japan. It doesn't invest in Japan. It does invest in EU and USA, but mainly to acquire technology, to acquire brands, and to acquire market proximity. Because in many cases, to serve your clients better, you have to, just in time. You can afford to ship everything out to China. That takes 3-4 weeks. So you need to be closer to the market, and then you need to do customize and so on. And that's what most of the investment in the USA and EU has to do. No, they just recently bought Motorola. They bought the medium server by IBM. China bought, way back, bought IBM PC, then our brand Lenovo, and is all either a combination of branding and technology. Is also investing in, investment in advanced market is small, it's 5%, but it's growing. It's going up. Is also invest in contiguous emerging markets in location that are crucial to get supplies. I mean, because not only has to secure the source of raw materials, agricultural goods, whatever, but it also has to secure access. For example, you may have heard that just like it looks like they've started works on a canal across Nicaragua that is going to be much longer and larger and wider than the Panama Canal, much more expensive. Now, that because they don't want to be dependent on the U.S. for access between the two oceans. That's because they need to. That's a question of access. You may have also heard this rumor they would like to build a canal parallel to the Suez Canal because they don't want the or organizes over access between the Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea, which is also the access over to Europe. You may have read very much that they paid and they made the commitment of $5 billion to build the port of Piraeus in Greece. That was very much at the center of the whole debate about regionalization in Greece, because that's very important, because China means to go through the Suez Canal, come to Greece, go all the way up to the Balkans, and access Central Europe, which is its largest export market. So it makes a lot of sense for them to have that port that has already become the largest transshipment port in the Mediterranean. They do 4 million containers. Other critical locations are the investment in Sri Lanka, in a port in Sri Lanka, in Pakistan, because China needs to ensure the access. It's very oil dependent. It doesn't have much oil. It consumes probably 10 million barrels a day, and it produces 3. and fracking is not really working. And that stuff comes from the Middle East. So they want to make sure it comes through. So a harbor in in Sri Lanka, a harbor in Pakistan, does really help ensure delivery. Because now the delivery in the Indian Ocean from the Middle East and is being ensured by the U.S. Navy. So they really don't like to be dependent on the U.S. Navy for the security of their oil supply. But they cannot stretch all the way from China all the way there. Then I can go on and on. They're accessing by railways. They're going to be a railway from Shanghai, Beijing, all the way to Singapore, and so they need to invest in Laos and Thailand and Myanmar to expand their market. But they're also, you have read that they have become, Chinese investors have become like probably number one in real estate. Like I think they're number one buyers in London. They're number one buyers in Vancouver. They're among the top buyers in Hong Kong, of course, in New York, in LA, in Singapore, in Sydney. There are huge issues. For example, in Vancouver, Canadians are sort of like a little mad because the real estate prices have gone up too much and they cannot live downtown anymore. In Australia is a huge debate about how much real estate investment Chinese should be allowed because they jack up the price. So some people say it's very good for the economy because the economy needs housing. Some people say, oh yeah, of course, but like the cost of housing goes up, it becomes a big issue. And fifth, Chinese are investing very heavily in developing markets to ensure construction contracts. Now, example, two big themes today. Railways. The high speed in China is thousands and thousands of kilometers. Now, you can go on high-speed train from anywhere to everywhere almost in China. And they are by far the number one producer of high-speed train and related equipment. I don't fly from Beijing to Shanghai ever anymore. It takes 4 hours and 48 minutes. It looks like first class in an airplane. The stations are impeccable. Like nothing to do with the European railway station. Even Penn Central, forget it. Just squeaky clean stations, perfect trains, totally on time. You have 4 hours and 48 minutes of uninterrupted Wi-Fi and phone call. Why the hell do you want to go into an airport, check in, security, pick up luggage? Forget it. Forget it. You don't fly anymore almost. Now you can take a train and go all the way into Hong Kong from Beijing. Now, I've been telling where and why they invest. Now I tell you briefly who they are. The first category are sovereign entities. That's easy. There are two major sovereign. One is the People's Bank of China that holds the reserves through an entity called SAFE, State Administration of Foreign Exchange, that typically did portfolio, now is getting into real. There are whole buildings, whole areas in London being developed with SAFE money, safe money. Plus there is another, that's about 3 billion, I would say, 3 something. Plus there is another, I think, 800 billion being managed by China Sovereign Fund, which is called China Investment Corporation, CIC. You can check all these on the web, and they're very open. They're both in Chinese and English. You see everything. Then there are two large policy banks. They're very, very active in investing overseas either through lending or through equity or through lending, which is in reality equity. That's why I talked about quasi-equity that are like Exim Bank, Import-Export Bank of China, and China Development Bank, CDB. Then you have a whole category of investors that are the state-owned enterprises that dominate big sectors like telecom, like steel, air transport, media. There are, some sectors in China are close to private investors, and they're dominated by state-owned enterprises. And they've traditionally been the big investor. Why I mention these? Because there are some issues here. People think there are some issues. And also now you have large private companies investing. Alibaba is totally private. And small private. And they're accounting for more and more of the pie. In the early times, they were absent. Only the sovereign funds, state-owned enterprises, policy banks were allowed to invest. Now I think private investors account for 40% of the pie, at least recently. Then you have individuals, all this apartment and real estate. And in Boston, where I live, is one of the places where I live. I spend my time in between. By the way, you know where I live? You have no idea, right? Okay. Well, I live in between Boston and Hong Kong. On the way between Boston and Hong Kong, I stop in my hometown, which is Bologna, which is in Italy, that is famous for having great food and the oldest university of the world. I got paid $2,000 to make this pitch to you by the City Hall of Bologna, and I'm not going to drop $2,000 for that. That was my sponsorship fee. And on Tuesday, I'm flying to Bangkok because I think I'm going to move from Hong Kong to Bangkok because the world is changing, and because Bangkok there is a lot of political mess going on. So I can buy cheap. And listen, look, guy, look. I've been in investment for a long time. I lose some. I like to talk more about the time when I make money. So don't trust people, because they love to tell you when they made money. They don't like to tell you when they lose it. But one rule I learned is, if you want to make money, the first great step is to buy low. That is a big help. If I have to pick a situation where like the price is low, sort of or a situation where they gave me a great business plan and huge multiple and so on, no question, I buy low. It's a great first step to make money. Very safe. So now it looks like Thailand is in a political upheaval. It's a great hub, great country, 70 million people right in the middle. They have agriculture, they have tourism, fantastic airport. I may be going to BBB, Boston, Bologna, Bangkok. That also looks good. Okay. Overall judgment on Chinese investment, if you ask me, it's really good. I really like Chinese to invest overseas. Cross-border investment, it does foster integration. It does bring people together. It does force people to look at a situation from a common viewpoint. By the end of the day, it means peace, it means prosperity. So before, the whole world was invested in China. China was invested nowhere. That, didn't like. I really do like. There was a big story that said never two countries that both had McDonald's ever fought a war against each other. You know that? Think about it. Ha ha. So that's what I like about cross-border investment. I was the first one. I was the only one. I was the first Mandarin was the first cross-border fund to do China outbound. We were the first foreign fund to get Chinese government money into it, way before CIC was created. And I really believe in what I was doing. Second, Chinese investment has kick-started growth in a lot of countries that were totally miserable. I mean, Africa has picked up because that growth was kick-started by Chinese investment. Like improbable places like Sudan or Ethiopia or something, they got going because that initial spark. And Chinese presence in Africa is big. If it hadn't been for China, they wouldn't be around. We would not be talking about Africa as an investment destination. Of course, there's a dark side to it. We'll address it. Hold on. Third thing, Chinese have a tendency to overpay. And they do pay, and that makes sellers extremely happy. I mean, they come down with the cash. So it's not bad. They're a little long, take some time, but eventually they stick and they pay and they overpay. And that it's good. When you start paying low on one side and selling high on the other side, it's a pretty good strategy, Many times they come and says, what is your strategy? My strategy is to buy low and sell high, And the fourth thing about Chinese investment is Chinese are discreet. Their investment does not lead to wars. I mean, it doesn't carry many times that damn American stuff, and they come over, they have to control, and they have to do a military takeover to protect their investment, and then all these messes, everything in Iran, it all started when they throw out Mossadegh and they put the Shah, and they made the old Muslim very crazy about it, and that's how it started. Chinese fairly discreet, they low key, and they don't come with. It's fine. I mean, they stay put, and it's fine. Tsipras in Greece said, I'm going to nationalize the Piraeus port. And then all of a sudden, after a week, no way, Chinese port, Piraeus port is fine. We're not going to nationalize it. Have you heard anything? Zero. Have you heard the Chinese embassy complaining? Zero. But there are some issues, okay? Some, I need to mention them, okay? I need to mention for completeness, but I'm not going to dwell with them because I only talk about things I'm on top of. There are lots of people, especially in the States, that carry on the human rights issue. I am not an expert in human rights. So I tell you, there's an issue on the table that you can read a lot about it. I'm not a human rights expert, but I can guarantee you that many of the countries that China invests do have a much worse human rights issue than the Chinese themselves have. Because, I think the first right should be to be able to breathe, eat, and be safe. And most places where China decided to invest don't even have that right. Now, Chinese are coming after the US in Afghanistan with a lot of money, and Chinese money should help pacify the country. Oh, that's fine. What is the human rights situation in Afghanistan? I'm not sure. Is that any better than China? I'm not sure. Okay. There is another issue, which is big. I happen to go to Washington. I do Senate hearings in Washington 4 times a year. No state-owned enterprises is okay, but we don't want state-owned enterprise that are extension of the Chinese state coming in. And every time I go, I meet the chairman of the China Security Commission, and I say, "Dear Dan, you are a fool." Because I don't give a damn whether it's state-owned or a private company, because by the end of the day, everybody in China obeys the party. That's it, period. Even if you're private, you do what the party says. So if you want to worry about political influence, just it doesn't matter. Worry about private and public, if that's your worry. Because by the end of the day, even Mr. Jack Ma from Alibaba does what the party secretary of Hangzhou says, okay? Because it's based in Hangzhou, it's Zhejiang, okay? I'll tell you. Jack he's not going to take an opposite stand, trust me. Another issue is, and this is I must witness, is a fairly widespread disregard from the environment. Damn it! I mean, they made the dump of China, and they have a tendency of making a dump of wherever they go. And I really love those rhinos. You know, they keep killing those rhinos for their horn. I'm sort of pissed at that. You know, I like the elephants. I like it. And, I sort of like they think the ivory and tiger poles and stuff. Please stop. Nah, I would like my kids and my grandkids to be able to see a real rhinos, and please. They think they have aphrodisiac powers. Please get some Viagra, but leave those rhinos alone. Oh, that's much safer. Another issue which I have witnessed a little bit is not very much attention to the rule of law. That is, in China, the judicial power is independent under the party. So basically, you are the party, you are the law. That doesn't work well with us, With us, we have the executive power, the legislative power, the judicial power. Each of them is independent, and you have to follow the law. I give an example. In China, watch out not to be perceived an enemy of China. Me? Now this is why the Kenny work bothers me. Me, an enemy of China. In the US, with all these defects, they tell me, watch out not to break the law. Makes a big difference. Makes a big difference the way you talk, the way you behave. I feel a little bit comfortable. I've been saying that Bush is an asshole for all the wars he did. But my American friends agree with me. But if I happen to say that some Chinese leader is not that nice, I might be an enemy of the state. That ain't that great. Trust me. Another issue is displacement of local investors. As I was saying, they come into Africa and so on, and locals, they buy wholesale and so on, and others, and they buy the real estate and so on. Then there is this, and then this is my last point, that you have to. Then the last point, I think, which is now there's the last month or two, they chopped off all the VPNs. I used to be able to go to China and access everything I want to access because I had the VPN. They kept me in touch with the world. So they chopped the VPN. So when I'm in China, I won't be able to to do any Facebook, any Twitter. How can I survive without Facebook? I mean, I'm chopped liver. Not only that, now there's a big thing that all universities in China should be shielded and protected from the ominous influence of Western values. And that pisses me off. Because I don't quite understand. The West has made many mistakes, but rejecting our values that way make me think, what's going to happen when they come here? I mean, and then I go back to the issue of investment. Where then does the investment stop? Because investment carries influence. We may be bankrupt, Europe is not doing great, well, we still have the right to speak. When does investment get so big to buy media power? If they buy a big consumer company that has a big advertising budget, the media crave for, that having a big consumer product company gives you power over media. So would I want that? Especially with someone that says that my values are not right. I don't expect my values to be 100% right, but I don't expect them to be 100% wrong. I expect a frank discussion. So now, unless we resolve this issue about whether they reject the Western values and why universities have to be cut off from any impact of Western values, then my word is, then we've got to be a little careful about Chinese investment. Because that is an issue. To me, that's a big issue that needs to be clarified.